Okay. Right, so today we will continue with the book reading on the story of Khemā, or Khemā of Great Wisdom, from the same book, The Great Disciples of the Buddha, by Venerable Nyanaponika and Hellmuth. Okay, so before we start, let us recite Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so Khemā of great wisdom. So just as the Buddha had appointed 2 chief disciples in the order of monks or bhikkhus, that is Venerable Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, he likewise named 2 women his foremost disciples in the Bhikkhuni Sangha, or the order of the nuns. And these 2 women were the Bhikkhunis Uppalavana and Khemā. The former excelling in psychic power, the latter in wisdom. So Uppalavana, or Bhikkhuni Uppalavana, excelled in psychic power. Bhikkhuni Khemā, excelled in wisdom. Just like how in the order of the bhikkhus, Venerable Sariputta was foremost in wisdom, and Mahamoggallana was foremost in psychic ability. Okay. And the Buddha has held up these 2. That means Bhikkhuni Uppalavana and Bhikkhuni Khemā as the models and examples for all the nuns to emulate, the standard against which other nuns could evaluate themselves. Okay? So the name Khemā means security and is a synonym for Nibbana. So the nun Khemā, before she became a nun, she belonged to a royal family from the land of Magadha. So we remembered a couple of times we read about Magadha, kingdom of Magadha, ruled by King Bimbisāra, and subsequently his son, Prince Ajatasattu, took over the throne. Yeah, so that's kingdom of Magadha. And she was extremely beautiful and fair to behold. And when she reached marriageable age, she became one of the chief consorts of King Bimbisāra, so like one of the queens. Now, this king, King Bimbisāra, he was a stream enterer. That means he was a Sotapanna and a generous benefactor of the Blessed One. So even before the Buddha gained enlightenment, when the Buddha was still on his quest, he passed by the kingdom of Magadha before he reached Bodh Gaya. And already he was much admired by the king, Bimbisāra. And in fact, King Bimbisāra offered the Bodhisattva to stay in his kingdom and become his advisor, his spiritual advisor. But at the time, because the Buddha was very keen to find out or discover the truth to end all suffering, the Buddha refused the king's request. So instead, the king King Bimbisara then asked the Buddha to promise him that when the Buddha, or if the Buddha did, discover the truth or the end of all suffering, that King Bimbisara said, you must come back to the kingdom of Magadha and teach us, which he did. Yeah, and the Buddha also spent quite some years in King Bimbisara's kingdom. Okay, so this king, he donated his own bamboo groves. So in the suttas, sometimes some of the suttas, when we read, thus have I heard, which is what Venerable Ananda used to say, thus have I heard on one occasion, the Blessed One was residing in Veluvana, or in the bamboo grove. So this is the bamboo grove that the king, Bimbisara, donated to the Buddha and the Sangha. Okay, so he donated the bamboo grove to the Sangha and constantly looked after the monks with great solicitude. But although Khemā often heard about the Buddha from the king, she resisted going to see him, fearful that he would find fault with her beauty of form and preach to her about the vanity of sensual pleasures to which she was tightly attached. So because she was so beautiful and admirable, she kind of got attached to her beauty. And she was kind of worried that, if she went to see the Buddha, the first thing the Buddha would preach to her was the issue of her clinging to her beauty, or clinging to her sensual pleasures. And she didn't want to let go of that. Yeah. The king, however, found a way to induce her to listen to the teaching. So he hired a troupe of singers to sing songs to her in praise of the harmony, peacefulness, and beauty of the bamboo grove monastery. And because Khemā loved the beauties of nature, she decided to visit there. So Veluvana or bamboo grove is a really calm, nice, peaceful place. So people who go and visit there will kind of feel, it's beauty, natural beauty. And Khemā not only was, let's say, attached to her own beauty, she was attached to sensual pleasures or beauty in all forms, including the beauty of nature. Yeah. So this was the king's kind of indirect way to kind of influence Khemā to visit the Buddha. So, decked out in royal splendor with silk and sandalwood, she went to the monastery and was gradually drawn to the hall where the Buddha was preaching. And the Buddha, who read her thoughts, created by his psychic powers a beautiful young woman standing beside him, beside the Buddha, fanning him. Okay? And Khemā was enthralled by this lovely woman and thought to herself, never before have I seen such a woman. I myself do not come even within a fraction of her beauty. Surely those who say the ascetic Gautama disparages beauty of form must be misrepresenting him. So in a way, Khemā was thinking that the Buddha discouraged beauty of any form. Is what Khemā initially had this impression based on what she heard about the Buddha. Yeah. So she's thinking, well, if people were saying the Buddha discourages people to think about beauty or be attached to beauty, then how come there's this woman that is more beautiful than me standing next to the Buddha, right? So she was thinking like that. Then the Buddha, through his psychic powers, made this created image of that young woman gradually change from youth to middle age, then to old age, with broken teeth, gray hair, wrinkled skin, until finally that image fell to the ground, lifeless. Only then did Khemā realize the vanity of external beauty and the fleeting nature of life. And she thought, has such a beauty, has such a body come to be wrecked like that? That means go through that period of decay and then ultimately death. Then my body too must share that fate. Then the Buddha read her mind and he said, Khemā, behold this mass of elements, diseased, impure, decaying, trickling all over and oozing. It is desired only by fools. So what the Buddha is describing is the human body, our body. So when he say, behold this mass of elements, that means our human body, yeah, is made up of you can say the 5 elements, or you can say a group of molecules put together, or you can say all the 36 parts of the body, whatever it is, it's just a mass of these elements put together, held together. And the Buddha is saying, these elements that you so treasure, your body, is diseased. I mean, it is always subject to some form of illness. Yeah, our human body, in one way or another, we're always subject to some kind of disease. So not only illness, the word disease actually can also be read as dis-ease, means not at ease, not comfortable. Yeah, and we all know this. Our body, at any point in time, in our life during the day, quite often is uncomfortable, more often uncomfortable than comfortable. It's impure. I mean, it is full of impurities. Yeah. So when we, let's say, want to meditate on the different parts of the body, like hair of the head, hair of the nails, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin. Yeah. And then we go further through the bone marrow, pus, blood, and all that. It's full of impurities. It's not nice. If we were to see a corpse, right? Nobody likes to see a corpse because it oozes out the impurities. If anyone has ever witnessed the immediate hours after a person's death, let's say, yeah, quite immediately after you'll see pus coming out or fluids coming out from the different orifices, let's say, of the human body. Yeah. Or even if we don't observe the corpse, yeah, if you go to anyone who is in a medical profession, not necessarily just a doctor, it could be a nurse, could be someone aiding the doctor, or even people who work in care for the sick, for the elderly. People who work in nursing homes or community cares, any one of them can tell you, because their job is to every day come into contact, yeah, through the patients, through their clients that they're trying to help. Yeah, every single day they are just witnessing the different impurities of the human body. Yeah, decaying. We are always moment to moment decaying because the body is constantly changing. It's constantly decaying, slowly, slowly, slowly over time, trickling all over, oozing. It is desired only by fools, is what the Buddha is saying. So the Buddha is kind of, as what Khemā kind of anticipated, but he used his psychic ability to present this teaching to Khemā a little bit differently, But in the end, he recited this stanza and he said, well, the human body is only desired by people who are foolish, who don't have this wisdom to see that the human body is actually just made up of a mass of impurities and is constantly decaying. And at the conclusion of the stanza, Khemā was established in the fruit of stream entry. But the Buddha continued to teach her, concluding his sermon with another verse. Those enslaved by lust drift down the stream as a spider glides on its self-spun web. Having cut off even this, the wise wander indifferent to the pleasures they renounce. So first the Buddha said about how the human body is impure. Then the Buddha follows by saying, people who are wise, those who are wise, they will become indifferent. They won't cling to all these sensual pleasures because they understand they are no longer enslaved by the sensual pleasures. And Khemā penetrated the sermon fully and right on the spot, while still dressed in her royal attire, she attained arahantship together with the analytical knowledges. And thereafter, having received her husband's permission, she joined the order of the nuns. An ordinary person hearing Khema's story sees only the wonder of the present happening. A Buddha, however, can see beyond this and knows that this woman did not come to full liberation by chance or good fortune. Yeah, so it's not in a sense, Khemā wasn't ordinary. She wasn't ordinary, and only a Buddha can see beyond, in terms of the past merits that Khemā had planted. And such an attainment, almost like lightning, is only possible for one whose seed of wisdom has long been ripening and whose virtue is fully matured. That means she has been practicing her sila, her precepts, for a very, very long time. And finally, that merits and those keeping of those precepts came fully mature. And in past aeons, means many, 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 many formation and destruction of universes in the past, Khemā had planted the roots of merit under many former Buddhas. And due to her innate attraction toward the highest truth, she always came to birth wherever a Buddha, a bearer of truth, lived. And it is said that already 100,000 aeons ago, she had sold her beautiful hair to give alms to the Buddha Padumuttara. And during the time of Buddha Vipassana, 91 aeons ago, she had been a bhikkhuni and a teacher of the Dhamma. And further, it is told that during the dispensations of the three Buddhas of our happy aeon, that means our current period of formation of current universe, there were three Buddhas before Buddha Gautama. So it is told that during those three Buddha's period, she was a lay disciple and gained happiness through building monasteries for the Sangha. So much, much for a very long time, she has been developing much merits. And while most beings drift around in heavenly or infernal realms during the lifetime of a Buddha, Khemā always tried to be near the source of wisdom. And when no Buddhas appeared in the world, she would be reborn at the time of Pacceka Buddha or in proximity to the Bodhisattva, the future Buddha Gautama. And in one birth, she was the wife of the Bodhisattva. That means the Buddha Gautama in one of his previous lives, she was the wife, who always exhorted his peaceful family thus: according to what you have, give alms. So she's the one that always kind of mentioned to the family, give alms or requisites based on what you have, according to what you have. Observe the uposatha, keep the precepts, uposatha, full moon day, yeah? Keep the precepts pure. Dwell upon the thought of death, mindful of your mortal state. That means don't think that we can live forever. Just remember to reflect on the impermanent nature of our lives, and also how subsequently we will have to die as well. So that life and death is two ends of the same stick. So we have to be mindful of that. For in the case of beings like us, death is certain, life uncertain. It means how our life goes about, very uncertain. Every day is uncertain, yeah. But death is certain. And all existing things must pass, subject to decay. Anything that comes into being, whatever comes into being must also decay. Therefore, be heedful day and night. And one day, Khema's only son in this life was suddenly killed by the bite of a poisonous snake. Yet she was able to keep total equanimity. So this was the life that when she was the wife of the Bodhisattva. Okay, she was equanimous. She was able to keep that. Uncalled he hither came, unbidden soon to go. Even as he came, he went. What cause is here for woe? That means what Khemā was saying is that uncalled he hither came. That means he came to his life. He came to this life. He arrived. Just as he arrived, unbidden, soon to go. That means not long after he went. So like sudden, not sudden, in the sense that not premeditated, not premeditated is the wrong word. Not foreseen. Say, just as how he came into our life, suddenly he left. Like very fleeting is what she's trying to say. What cause is here for woe? That means so fleeting. He came just as fleeting as he came, also in the same way he left us fleetingly. So she's saying, how can we lament or grieve, let's say. No friend's lament can touch the ashes of the dead. That means no matter how much we lament or cry over the person who has died, it cannot make a difference. Ashes of the dead, the person is dead, we cremate them, only thing left is the ashes. No amount of sadness, no amount of grief can change that fact. That means can bring the dead back to life. Right? Why should I grieve? He fares the way he had to tread. So she's saying, as a mother, even she says, why should I be sad? He had to. He lived and died because he had to go through that. Though I should fast and I should weep, how would it profit me? So she's saying, even if I fast, even if I don't eat, even if I cry and cry and cry, how's that going to help me? My kith and kin, alas, would more unhappy be. That means she's saying, if I were to do that, then my family will become more unhappy. No friend's lament can touch the ashes of the dead. Why should I grieve? He fares the way he had to tread. Okay. Then another time, she was the daughter-in-law of the Bodhisattva, and many times a great empress who dreamed about receiving teachings from the Bodhisattva and then actually received such teachings. Then it is further recounted that when she was a queen, her husband, the king, was the future Sariputta. So in previous lives, not only was Khemā associated with previous lives of Buddha Gautama, she also was associated with previous lives of Venerable Sariputta as his queen in a previous life. And this husband in former lives was a righteous king who upheld the 10 royal virtues. So what are the 10 royal virtues? That means the king upheld them in that life: generosity, morality, renunciation, truthfulness, gentleness, patience, amity, harmlessness, humility, and justice. So this was a very righteous king. And because of these virtues, the king lived in happiness and bliss. And Khemā, too, as the queen that time, lived in accordance with these precepts. It was only because Khemā had already purified her heart in many past lives that she was mature enough on her first meeting with the Buddha to realize the ultimate truth in twinkling of an eye. So because she had already planted the seeds in so many lifetimes, for so many aeons, that it is not by chance when upon her first meeting with the Buddha showed her some instances, recited some teachings, and she became enlightened, easy to capture because she had been building the seeds and the virtues for many, many lifetimes. So Khemā's transformed attitude to sensuality is starkly revealed to us by a dialogue in verse recorded in the Therigatha, in which she fends off the advances of a charming seducer. According to the commentary, the seducer is actually Mara, the tempter, who had approached intending to divert her from her quest for liberation, vainly. She was already an arahant. So Mara wanted to tempt Khemā by seducing her. But, of course, Mara couldn't do that because she was already an arahant. So she can't be tempted. She's already no longer cling to any form of sensual pleasure. Mara said, "You are so young and beautiful, and I myself am in the bloom of youth." So Mara presents himself as a youthful person. "Come, noble lady, let us rejoice in the music of a fivefold ensemble." Then Khemā replies, "I am repelled and humiliated by this putrid, fleshy body," that she's saying, the human body is just full of impurities. "Afflicted by illness, so very fragile. I have uprooted sensual craving. Sensual pleasures are now like sword stakes. The aggregates are their chopping block. And that which you call sensual delight has become for me no delight at all." So what Khemā is now answering is saying, the sensual pleasures are like are like swords, and our 5 aggregates like the chopping block. That means the sensual pleasures are like, if we're not careful, they will chop up our aggregates. Oh, just give me 1 second. I thought I was plugged in. Just 1 second, yeah? My battery is running out. Okay. Everywhere, delight has been destroyed. The mass of darkness has been shattered. Know this, O evil one, you are defeated, exterminator. So it's saying the mass of darkness has been shattered. I'm no longer, I've already overcome. Is what Khemā is saying. I've already overcome all darkness. Yeah. And the Buddha praised Khemā as the nun foremost in wisdom, and a dialogue that has come down in the Samyutta Nikaya confirms this, illustrating how her wisdom made a deep impact on King Pasenadi. So remember we read about King Pasenadi in the last reading, yeah? About Queen Malika, and Queen Malika was King Pasenadi's queen. So the king was traveling through the countryside of Kosala. So Kosala is the kingdom that King Pasenadi ruled. Magadha is the kingdom that King Bimbisāra ruled. And they both knew each other, okay? And so the king was traveling through the countryside of Kosala and arrived one evening at a small township. And wishing to have a conversation about spiritual matters, he ordered a servant to find out whether there was a wise ascetic or Brahmin in the town. Yeah. And the servant inquired everywhere, and he could not find any ascetic or Brahmin or his master, the king, to converse with. But he learned that a bhikkhuni, an ordained disciple of the Buddha, was dwelling in the town. And it was the saintly Khemā, who was famed everywhere for her wisdom, deep insight, great learning, and perspicacity in discussion. I mean, she was very eloquent in discussing about the Dhamma. And when the king received this report, he went to her, greeted her with respect, questioned her about the after-death condition of a Tathagata, a liberated sage. So the king wanted to know, after the Buddha has died, what happens to the Buddha? Okay, so he asked a series of questions to Khemā. Does a Tathagata, that means enlightened Buddha, a perfect one, exist after death? The exalted one, the Buddha, has not declared that a Tathagata exists after death. Then a Tathagata does not exist after death. Then Khemā answered, well, that too, the exalted one has not declared. So what Khemā is answering is the Buddha has not declared that a Buddha exists after death, nor does not exist after death. So the king is like, okay. So then a Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death. So he's trying to, use logic. Let's say, if the Buddha says, the Buddha didn't declare that he exists after death, but he also didn't declare that he doesn't exist after death, then does he declare that he both exists and also doesn't exist after death, right? And even that, Khemā say, even that the exalted one has not declared. Then there's a Tathagata neither exists nor not exists after death. And that too, the exalted one has not declared. So then the king is perplexed, the king is confused. So thereupon the king wanted to know why the Buddha had rejected these 4 questions. And to understand the reason, we must first understand what these 4 views imply. those four questions. Yeah? The views concern a Tathagata, which here means not only a Supreme Buddha, but any liberated sage. And the four views, however, conceive the Tathagata in terms of a category of selfhood, assuming that the liberated being is a substantial self. They formulate contradictory theses on the fate of that self. So it means what it's trying to say is these four views are based on the idea of a substantial self. That means there is a substantial self belonging to a being. Therefore, that particular self, something must happen after. So the concept, it's a atta, it's like holding on to the concept or the view of there is a self. So the first view, which is conditioned by the craving for existence, maintains that those who have reached the highest goal continue on after death in some metaphysical dimension, either as distinct individuals or as absorbed into some transpersonal spiritual essence. And this answer is the one given by most religions, including several later interpretations of Buddhism. So the first view is saying after death, they exist. That means there is some dimension that an enlightened being, after they become enlightened, they enter, excuse me, they enter into that dimension, or they become absorbed somehow as a kind of spiritual essence in that dimension. Okay, that's the first view, which the Buddha does not declare. Then the second answer, that a Tathagata does not exist after death, reflects the craving for non-existence, for annihilation, okay, which the Buddha also does not declare. And the theorist regards the perfect one as a truly existent self whose fate at death is complete annihilation. That means there is a self, and after death, that self, that existent self, is annihilated. And from this perspective, deliverance is nothing more than the absolute dissolution of a real self. That means this particular view says that at the point of death, that being no longer exists. And then it's saying that deliverance or realizing the truth is achieved by not having a self, dissolution of that self. So it's like saying at the point of death, then I am free, kind of thing. Then the third answer seeks a compromise. Everything impermanent in a Tathagata would be annihilated at death, but the permanent essence, his soul, would remain. Okay? And again, the Buddha never declared that there is a soul. Okay? And the fourth answer tries to escape the predicament by formulating a neither nor solution, a skeptical approach that still implicitly accepts the validity of the Tathagata as a real self. And all four formulas have been rejected by the Buddha as wrong views because they all presuppose that there is an I distinct from the world. That means these four views are based on the foundation that there must be an I, a being, an identity belonging to each person, that each person is an identity, and that identity is distinct, separate from the world. And I, which is either raised to eternal life or annihilated in the abyss of nothingness. That means these four views, Buddha is saying those four views are incorrect because they are founded on the basis of a belief that a being comes to be with an identity or evaporates, annihilates. That means disappear into nothingness. That being also disappear into nothingness. That there is a I, there is an identity that disappears into nothingness. Which in reality, I and world are merely abstractions posited on the basis of the five aggregates that constitute the process of experience. So what it's trying to say, really, what the Buddha is teaching is this concept of I, me, mine, or an identity, or the world as in how we see the world, the environment around us, is based on our aggregates, our form, feeling, perception, mental formations or thoughts, and consciousness that constitute the process of experience, the experience through the six sense bases. So what forms or feeling or perception or mental formation or consciousness that arises through the six sense bases, that experience coming through the six sense bases constitutes, creates that I, that this world that we see is what the Buddha is saying. Okay. And only the enlightened ones and their wise disciples can actually see this as it is. It means everything that we see or any object that comes through the six sense base from the enlightened ones and their disciples, they can see that, oh, it's just the sensory experience through the six sense bases that creates this identity, that creates this world. And that is why there is essentially that, and that is why the view of a self or the view of an I or the view of a world cannot be justified, because it is simply through, it is an experiential state, not an existential state. Yeah, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm not sure if I am making it more confusing. But what the Buddha's teaching essentially is that everything that our brain and our mind and our body conceives is really through an experiential process, not based on an existence, so to speak. Okay. Those who do not share this insight assume one of the four speculative views. That means those who don't see this will naturally assume one of the four states that the king asked. They suppose either that I, an essentially permanent self, even if it's not a body, can be the soul, is wandering through samsara, the round of birth and death, gradually ascending higher and higher until liberated into divine essence. Or they conclude that liberation is simply the destruction of a real self. That means just this self dissolutes, disappears, then liberated. Or they attempt to formulate a syncretic position, or they fall into skepticism or even confusion. The Buddha, however, teaches that there is no real I or self to be either projected into eternity or utterly destroyed. Such a substantial self has never existed and thus has never wandered through samsara. What we call I, what we call world, are in reality a constantly changing process, always in flux. So because we are clinging to our six sense base and the experiences that come through, we form in our mind this permanent self or this permanent world. But in reality, what is actually happening is this, earlier in the stanzas, Buddha mentioned Khemā, this mass of elements, this body that we see, this mass of elements or group of molecules, let's say, put together, is always changing constantly. The world, inverted commas, that we experience around us is constantly changing, constantly in a state of flux, constantly changing. There is nothing that we can say is an entity that will never change. And this process throws up the illusions of I and world, which then becomes objects of speculation regarding their past origin and future destiny. The way to liberation requires that we stop speculating about the I, abandon our habitual views and formulas, and directly examine the phenomena on the basis of which views of self are formulated, the concrete processes of mind and body. So in brief, basically coming back to a couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. Madhusudanji recite a sutta, very brief one from the Sutta Nipata, which really in the beginning starts off with, reminding ourselves, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, with whatever experience that we are going through, and to understand that all these experiences really are just coming through our sixth sense base as we experience it. And so it is very useful also during our formal meditation, when we are using the 6 R's, when there is something that we are trying to work through. Let's say, well, simple, if it is a hindrance or if it is a discomfort, whether it's a mental discomfort or a physical discomfort, if it is some form of clinging, some form of habitual tendency, any of that sort, then it is useful to use the 6 R's. And this is precisely how we can, here abandon our habitual views and formulas, which basically means abandon. We cannot just say, okay, I'm going to stop thinking. I'm going to force myself to stop thinking that I am an entity. It doesn't work like that because it's not coming from the logical thinking brain. So our human brain has 3 levels. And that's the reason why the teachings of the Buddha is to be practiced and realized through knowledge and vision. And the development of wisdom, not just knowledge alone, because it is not something that we can just think and then we get it. It doesn't happen that way. It is through the practice and the culmination through meditation that we experience it. That's what the meaning of vision is, through experiencing it, that we can come to realize that our habitual views of, this, whatever it is we're experiencing, is me, mine, myself. So we are, in essence, when we are using the teachings of the Buddha, or even just reminding ourselves, okay, whether it's formal meditation or whether it's throughout the day, whatever arises, whatever emotion, feeling, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, or whatever thoughts come to be, when they arise, that it is useful to remind ourselves, instead of getting carried away, that this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is always subject to constant flux, it is always changing, and it is useful to practice to be in the present time or present moment, so that we open up our minds, open up our hearts to all possibilities, when we are in the present, not worried about what's going to happen or project in our mind what's going to happen. Of course, we may have some projections, but if we continue to keep that kind of openness and just observe what is happening to my mind, what is happening to my body every moment, which is the practice of mindfulness, and just observe what is happening, how am I feeling, what am I thinking, what is my habitual tendency here that has arisen, what am I clinging to, what are the thoughts that I cannot let go. That is really how we can incorporate our mindfulness and daily practice. And eventually that daily practice will then also complement our formal practice and become very powerful. So liberation is to be won not by fashioning metaphysical hypotheses, but by observing with mindfulness the arising and passing away of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, which is what we just discussed. And all these phenomena have arisen due to causes. Therefore, they are impermanent and subject to dissolution. It means any experience that we observe comes to be, the very reason that it has come to be means it will also cease. There is a condition, there is a cause for it to come to be, then there will also be a cause for it to dissolve. But whatever is impermanent and subject to decay cannot be self. Since the five aggregates are subject to destruction, since they become sick, they disintegrate, they pass away, they are not myself, they are not mine. I cannot hold on to it. They are merely empty phenomena occurring through conditions, due to certain conditions that arise in the past or at the present. It conditions this to happen. And because all views of self are only mental constructions or mental constructs, products of speculative thought, any designation of the enlightened one after death is an illusion, born from a compulsive urge for conceptual certainty. So what it means is, because we have been through the birth and death realms of samsara so many lifetimes, we have developed this craving or clinging to something, a concept that we can hold on to. Everything around us, including ourselves, is a concept. We have to have this concept. Some people are also very worried about not just the concept of self. A lot of people cling on to a certain identity of themselves. That means they see themselves as, let's say I am May. So I may have this certain mental image that I conjure up in my mind, that May has to be of, a certain behavior, a certain character, a certain habitual tendency to the world. Everybody must see May as like this, and that is how we tend to live our lives. We subconsciously, not consciously, we subconsciously have this cling to a certain concept. In summary, we all have this urge, this clinging to, there's a I, me, mine. Okay. And whoever has followed the Buddha's teaching, as Khemā did, is greatly relieved to see that the Buddha did not teach the destruction of an existing entity, the annihilation of a self. And we live in a world of perpetual destruction, uncontrollable transiency. It means things are always changing. In the realm of death, and whatever we look upon as I and mine constantly vanishing. It is only by renouncing these things that we can reach a refuge of true peace and security. And thus the Blessed One proclaimed, "Open are the doors to the deathless. Let those with ears send forth faith." And in her discussion with King Pasenadi, Khemā illustrated her point with a simile. So remember a couple of paragraphs ago, King Pasenadi was looking for someone. His servant found Khemā. So she asked the king whether he had a skillful mathematician or statistician who could calculate for him how many grains of sand are contained in the river Ganges. River Ganges is huge. Yeah. So it would have to be a very skilled mathematician to be able to figure out how many grains of sand. And the king replied that this was not possible because the grains of sand in the Ganges were innumerable, incalculable, because it's a great big river. So the nun then asked him whether he knew of anyone who could figure out how many gallons of water are contained in the great ocean. How many gallons of water in the great ocean? And that too, the king considered impossible, for the ocean is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom. And just so, said Khemā, is the Tathagata. Whoever wishes to define the perfect one can only do so through the five aggregates. Yet, those who have reached awakening no longer hold to any of them as their personal identity. The Tathagata is released from reckoning by form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. That means the Tathagata is free from the five aggregates. He is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom, like the great ocean. Therefore, it is not appropriate to say that after death, the Tathagata exists or does not exist, or that he both exists or does not exist, or that he neither exists nor does not exist. None of these designations can define the undeniable, undefinable. So Khemā is just trying to say, in essence, the question you're asking, she's trying to say in an indirect way, your question is wrong to begin with, is what Khemā is trying to say, okay? And the king rejoiced in the penetrating explanation of the nun Khemā, and later he met the Buddha, asked him the same four questions, and the master replied exactly as Khemā had done, using the very same words. And the king was amazed and recounted his conversation with the holy nun Khemā, the woman disciple who excelled in wisdom. Okay, so that was today's reading, which we managed to finish Khemā's story in one reading, so that's good. Was there any thoughts or anyone has any questions or want to share anything? Next reading we will read about the Kundalakesa, also one of the famous female disciples. Yeah. Anyone?
That was very interesting. Thank you very much. Did you mention that there are three levels in the mind? One is intellectual, and what are the other two? Vision and knowledge. Could you expand on that, please?
No, that was two separate things. So what I was trying to suggest, and I'm no medical doctor or neuroscientist, but there are three so-called different sections of the brain. So, and this is based on how human evolution, human beings evolve. So we have the what's called the lizard brain, which is the closest to our spinal cord. So the stem at the bottom part of the brain, connected to the spinal cord or central nervous system. And this one is the one that this part of the brain controls our heart beating, our lungs expanding and contracting, things like that. So the functions of the human body that keep us alive. Then there is it's been a while since I really, the next layer is, I think, what's called the limbic system. So this is the part of the brain that protects us. So in the days of caveman days, this part of the brain protects humans from the saber-toothed tiger, for example. So this is the part of the brain where, without having to think logically, we as humans can sense when there is a life-threatening danger coming at us. And what happens is this part of the brain will then trigger adrenaline to fire up very quickly in our limbs, so the legs and the arms, let's say, but more importantly, the legs, so that we can suddenly run or jump or get out of the way. So in today's modern society, this part of the brain enables us to react when we sense a danger, or let's say we are trying to cross the road and suddenly there's a bike coming at us. And we don't have to, there's no time for the logic part of the brain to go, there is a bike coming at us, let me jump out of the way now. It's not going to be fast enough to save ourselves. So this part of the brain is also the part of the brain that, without having to think, we will run or jump when we sense, when our perceptive state senses some life-threatening situation. This part of the brain is also where the things like the amygdala, the hippocampus, all these parts of the brain sit. That means this is the part of the brain that triggers stress levels, triggers emotional levels. This is the part of the brain that, if somebody says something to us and the hippocampus, which is like a librarian, very quickly associates whatever is said, or even if it's not in terms of words, it could be just very subtle body language that we see, the brain perceives it in and associates it with a form of memory in the past that ignites a certain discomfort. Immediately, stress is triggered. So the amygdala is the main culprit here, so to speak. And of course, with the help of the hippocampus and all that, the amygdala, without us having to logically think, will suddenly, if it is a kind of association with a previous experience that is uncomfortable, let's say, then the amygdala will trigger some hormones, will make us feel upset or angry or depressed or whatever it is. Okay. Then there is the outermost part of the brain, which is where the prefrontal cortex is also sitting. And this is, let's say, the part of the brain where we use our logical thinking. So where we, study mathematics, or basically analytical part of the brain. So anything that we can reason, we will use this part of the brain to reason, right? And that's the reason why, in terms of we have just now the limbic system to save ourselves, because the process of information being passed from the prefrontal cortex, or the outermost part of the brain, the outermost part of the brain is also what makes human beings distinct from the animal realm. Because human beings have this logic thinking, analytical part of the brain, that is what differentiates us from animals. Because we are more, we can come up with systems, ideas, because of this logic part of the brain. However, the information transmitted from the logic part of the brain to our central nervous system is slower than the other two parts of the brain. And that's why we cannot rely on the logic thinking part of the brain to save ourselves from impending danger. Now, coming back to the discussion of subconscious, conscious, subconscious, conscious mind. I'm no expert, but I am reading a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he's a trained chiropractor, but also a neuroscience educator, and he's suggested a number of meditation practices to help us, essentially what the title of the book suggests, break the habit of being ourselves. So basically, and it's not completely foreign from what we've already studied in terms of the 6 R's and all that, because it's rooted on the foundation of observing everything that our brain and mind are going through, brain and body are going through at every moment. But the idea is that there is our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. So those who, let's say, are what's the word now? Who have cultivated or practiced meditation for a certain period of time may be able to understand that when we meditate to a certain level, essentially where the concept of the body loses its tangibility, let's say, so there's that easing away from the sense of the body, then the mind starts to go further down to the subconscious level. I mean, it's not the thinking, it's no longer the thinking part of the brain that is active. And going to the subconscious is where a lot of things could be buried in the subconscious state. Other things that in medical terms that use this is like hypnosis or self-hypnosis. So people who want to treat, use different ways of treating, let's say, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or some form of trauma because it's buried, for lack of a better word, buried into the subconscious part of the mind, let's say, that in our normal day-to-day mental, logical thinking state, very difficult to go there. Why this is used? Well, because, and it's been proven clinically, that a lot of traumas sit in the subconscious state, but because it's buried deep, and we cannot use the logic thinking brain to overcome it, if it is not healed, it can manifest into physical illnesses. So this is nowadays considered quite useful, quite common to treat patients where no form of, let's say, modern medicine can heal the patient. Okay, things like hypnosis, things like meditation, of course, but going into the subconscious, basically. So how I was trying to relate to that is if some people think that if I read all the suttas in the Nikayas and understand it from an intellectual point of view, that is using the logic thinking part of the brain to even the one that we talked about, the concept of I, me, my, mine, if the person just uses that like in debates, we see in debates, right, using a debate form of logical thinking to reason out that concept, it wouldn't amount to anything because this practice taught by the Buddha is through experience. It is not through just reading a bunch of texts and trying to speak them out, so to speak. So it's not like it's mathematics, let's say, mathematics is something that we can just study and practice, memorize, or biology, practice, memorize, and then we get it, kind of thing. This knowledge and vision is something that only through the meditative experience, through the gradual practice, daily practice, can it be experienced. And that is what the vision part comes to fruition. It is an experiential state of mind. It is not through a logical thinking brain process. Sorry, I think I went big roundabout way, but I hope
No,
that
that's
kind of.
very, very interesting. Thank you very much indeed.
Did you have any thoughts on that?
No, that's very interesting. I had a vague idea about it, but but I knew you would know much more about it. That's great. Thank you very much indeed.
To be very honest, I don't know a lot about it. But even, let's say, we don't have to think so complicated, in essence. So I think, Madam Nanda, you have been meditating quite a while. So even if just from a very basic sense, when we are not in formal meditation, our five senses are bombarded all the time. When we are in formal meditation, we essentially are putting up, or let's say, conditioning our body and mind so that it is less bombarded by our environment. So when we condition our brain and body, we essentially, it's like setting a stage for the mind to settle down. So there is an analogy that's commonly used. If you imagine a cup or a glass of water, but the water is a little bit muddy. If we are stirring with a spoon and keep stirring it, then the water continues to be muddy, so we can't really see it. But if we stop the stirring, eventually the sand in the water settles down. When the sand settles down, then the water becomes clearer and we can see. So that's a common analogy used for formal meditation practice. So essentially what we do is we condition our brain and body so that it's settled down, so that the the six sense bases are not so actively bombarded by external experiences. And when that happens, we are allowing the brain to settle down a little bit. And this is what all those experiments, the researchers in neuroscience, how they pluck, they tap people. They put wires on the skull. There are instruments that can measure the frequency levels, what the brain is emitting. So there is like the beta level, alpha level, gamma, theta, something like that. Basically, the different frequencies that, and they do this a lot. It's been decades now that they conduct experiments with monks, Tibetan monks, Theravada monks, when they are in the meditative state, or even after they come out of formal meditation during the day. So they measure them during meditation, after meditation, or when they are practicing loving kindness, for example. So why, again, metta, why is it useful? Not only as a very effective way to fall into the jhanas, but also the practice of loving kindness emits a certain frequency. We emit a certain frequency when we are practicing loving kindness, provided there's no deep blockage. Yeah. And again, the whole blockage conversation is a separate conversation where we have to do a whole lot of forgiveness. Okay, assuming that is not in the picture, then the practice of loving kindness and the brain and the body emits a certain frequency. Simple way without even using all these probes is that animals, dogs and cats, they can detect because they are more sensitive to different frequency levels. So they can detect if a person has certain loving kindness, then animals will come close to you because animals can feel that you are practicing or emitting loving kindness. So even from that very basic concept, without all these discussions, the practice of loving kindness has been proven, even by scientists and researchers, to be able to, what's the word now? Change the frequencies of the person. Not to mention the people that surround us. That's why that's another incentive, let's say, to practice loving kindness. Of course, we have all tested that before as well, so it can go beyond time and space. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, in the part one of this book, spends a lot of time talking about that concept, how we are still seeing ourselves and the world around us as, he calls it a big three, limited by the environment, limited by our body, and limited by time. So he goes into a whole scientific discussion. This is part one of the book. He goes into the whole scientific discussion of how we, because of our concept, we talked about concept earlier, because of how we are so habitually clinging to the concept of an existential environment, an existential body, and time being of a certain existence. That is why our brain and body cannot go beyond, cannot be able to conceive or understand the concept of what's beyond he calls it environment, but basically it's the world that we just read. The world, the body, meaning this concept of the Buddha said is 6 foot fathom long body, and the concept of time. So he goes into the whole quantum field discussion. It's a very interesting book. I haven't finished yet. And how using meditation we can transcend that concept, the concept of the environment, the body, and time as being finite, transcend that and as a way to heal, as a way to heal. Very interesting. I haven't finished yet, but I am trying to practice that alongside using the 6 hours, of course, primarily with the goal, with the intention to, again, the same way, to break, well, he calls it break the habit of being ourselves, but in essence, what we are studying as well, to break the habitual tendencies that keep repeating, the patterns that keep repeating in our lives. So I'm keen to break those habitual tendencies. In adults, it's a little bit tricky, especially if, there are certain past traumas that we cling to. I was just in a conversation with one of my students. He's 10, 9, 10 years old. And then I've been sharing with them the 3 steps for kids. Have a happy thought, relax the head, and smile. I used to explain that relaxing the head, just imagine the head's like a bowling ball and rolls away. He told me yesterday how he thinks about relaxed head. He says, "Oh, I just imagine my head is going on vacation." I thought that was really cute. Um, so what happened was we have what's called an Easter show here. Every Easter, it's like a place, a big field. It's an event over a long weekend. And there are all these farm animals that farmers will bring, and it's like a carnival of sorts. And every year they do that once a year over Easter. Don't know if they have that in the UK. But then all these farmers, and it's very fun, especially for kids. It's a place that parents usually bring. And so what happens is the kids get to see actual farm animals. And of course, there are other events. There's like maybe even the Ferris wheel, and there might be circus or simple things. There's obviously a lot of food. And I think he also learns dance. And then probably his dance school, they put up a performance. And what happened was he got lost. So he got separated from his mom and dad. So obviously he was in a lot of he was scared. Obviously his mom and dad were as well, but he plucked up the courage. So he asked strange, he kept asking around, and because he knew that he was going to have to perform on stage with his other dance mates. So he just plucked up the courage and he asked around, where is the stage and all that. And eventually he got back together with his parents, and then he eventually performed on stage. What was interesting was that in his own words, he said to me, yes, I was traumatized initially because I was lost and suddenly couldn't find my parents. And I knew I had to go perform on stage, but um, I reminded myself, to do have a happy thought, relax my head and smile, have a happy thought, relax my head and smile, and keep doing that, keep repeating that to myself. And eventually I got there and I performed on stage, and even my dad said that I performed very well. And he said very quickly I was no longer um, in distress. In fact, he said that was a very happy day for me. And I was very inspired um, by him sharing how very quickly he could overcome that anxiety, that trauma, yeah, because he was lost in a sea of people. Um, and very quickly he could independently figure out how to find his way and be reunited with his parents. And very quickly, even as he was talking to me, there was no sign of any distress or trauma at all. In fact, he said, "No, actually, I found the whole episode actually a very good experience, and it was one of the best experiences." He said, "I was at the end of the day very happy." So yeah, these sort of techniques that we learn in meditation can go really, really far. Although they are very simple, right? The 6 R's, or recognize, release, relax, respond. They are not complicated. Um, and as we have tried, we can very easily shrink them for in a simple manner for children, for kids. But they can work very efficiently to a very deep level, even to the subconscious level, if we are well trained, to go really deep into the human mind, to heal, and basically rewire our brain so that we can, hopefully emit more positive frequencies so that we can, with sufficient practice, be able to influence positively not just ourselves, but also the people around us, um, families, society, etc. That is the main challenge. Again, I went big whole roundabout way. But I hope that was useful. Anyway, we probably should end.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, good. You can see the sharing of merits, yeah? Let us share some merits, yeah, together. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief. May all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I wish you all a lot of metta, a lot of loving kindness, so that you can continue um, to have a lot of peace and harmony, not only in your lives, but also those you come into contact with. That really, and I think Venerable Bhante Vimalaramsi and Venerable Sister Khemā used to say, if we say that we want to change the world, let's say, this is probably one of the best ways to do that. That means we first practice and first heal ourselves so that our frequencies are changed, our frequencies are adapted. What frequency? That frequency of loving kindness. It is a very positive, higher state of frequency, and we as human beings are best positioned to be able to reach that frequency more and more. Uh, why we don't do it enough? um, mm, for various things, various habitual tendencies, but it is possible through more and more practice. And by doing so, hopefully, we will be able to influence others around us incrementally, slowly, to be able to ourselves lead better lives, more positive lives, and those around us to be more positive, live positive lives as well. Um, uh, I probably don't do good enough a job, but I am constantly inspired by these kids that I teach, because they can do it. Really. And they live as children, very positive um, lives, very happy lives, irregardless of how busy or how stressful their life is. My student yesterday, he was saying, yes, I do get stressed. I'm not saying I don't get stressed. He's having a big exam next week, and he's also doing his piano exam. I do get stressed, but I know how to manage that stress. So yeah, children seem to be able to get hold of this practice of loving kindness if taught well. Um, quite they can adapt pretty quickly, pretty easily. The only thing is they need a lot of guidance and a lot of support, and not only from guides but also from their own parents. The parents play a big, huge role, and it's very clear. The kids that I see, that I teach, those that really adopted, really lead very happy, very fruitful. Yes, they do have stress, just like many other kids, but they know how to overcome their stress. They know how to manage their stress so that they are not overtaken by the stress much, much, much better than their friends and others around them. And by having such healthy, holistic lives or lifestyle, essentially they are practicing without them knowing the Eightfold Path, right? Harmonious lifestyle they are practicing. And when they become happy like that, their parents witness it. So that is also one way to inspire their parents to start practicing that way as well. Anyway, leave you all to that. Happy practicing. We will come again next week, hopefully read Buddha Kundalakesa. Hope I got her name right. Anyway, the one with the long name. Okay. All right. Take care. Bye bye.